All right, official welcome. This is the Marin Coalition. My name is Scott Pinsky. I'm the chair of the organization this year. And we'd like to welcome those of you who come often, as well as those of you who are here for the first time. How many first timers have we got here to the Marin Coalition? Oh, that's a lot. All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the organization, but I will just give an introduction to what we do. We're a 501c3 has been giving presentations here in Marin County on topics of public interest for over 50 years. One of our presenters, Lori Frigoli, has been a past presenter for us. And we've had a very interesting group of people that have come and spoken with us. This year alone, and we do this every year, this year alone, we had Dick Spotswood from the Marin IJ. We had Joe Garofoli from the San Francisco Chronicle, columnist there. We had Dr. Matt Willis, who is the former health director for the County of Marin. We had Josh Freed, who is the executive director of an organization called LAFCO here in Marin County. That's just what we've done so far this season. So you can tell we get very interesting topics, and we invite you to come check us out online. If you haven't taken a look at the website, it's marincoalition.org. You can find out about upcoming events there. You can make donations if you haven't finished your year-end donations. And you can also see in our archives the videotape, or the recording, I should say, I guess, of past programs all the way back for years. I don't know quite how far back it goes, but if you go to the archive tab, you'll see a list of every event that we've had that we've recorded, and it goes back years, and it's some very, very interesting programs there. There's probably something for everybody on that list. All right. Promised I wouldn't spend a lot of time, but I just already have. Let me go ahead and get started. On today's program, we're pleased to welcome back to our podium the Marin County District Attorney Lori Frigoli. She will lead a discussion today on a topic that we've entitled Human Trafficking in Marin County, Hidden in Plain Sight. This program is being presented by Marin Coalition and a number of other groups that are helping to co-sponsor our event today and underwrite us, and we appreciate all of that support. They are the Marin County District Attorney's Office, the Marin County Coalition to End Human Trafficking, the League of Women Voters of Marin County, the Marin County Coalition to End Human Trafficking, and the Center for Domestic Peace. And as I said, you can get some information on some of those organizations over there on the side. Last thing before we introduce our program today, our next event will be on February 12th. That's the next scheduled event. We have others that are coming up, but we haven't got the dates confirmed yet. But the one that is confirmed is February 12th. That topic is Rancho Roots, the California Legacy of Marin. So it's basically the history of Marin County going back to the Mexican era and the life that was led here in Marin during that period on the ranchos. Okay. Last little item here is if your cell phone is on, kindly turn off the sound so we don't have a disruption there. Lori Frigoli is the elected Marin County District Attorney, a lifelong member of the Marin County community. Her career in public service began early. She served as a police cadet, reserve officer, and later as a full-time police officer in Santa Rosa, where she worked on investigations under undercover assignments and crisis response. She joined the Marin County DA's office in 1990, has prosecuted a wide variety of cases, including domestic violence, sexual assault, elder abuse, gang-related crimes, etc. As DA, she's committed to strengthening public safety through collaboration, increasing community understanding of the justice system, and ensuring fair and effective administration of justice. Lori will be moderating today's event, and she will introduce our other presenters in due course. So let me please introduce Lori Frigoli.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. If you don't know me, I am Lori Frigoli. It's my honor to serve as Marin County's district attorney. If you don't live in Marin County, I'm not your DA. But we do collaborate with other DA's offices, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. So we want to thank you for joining us today. This is a great group, much larger than we expected. And we are here to honor Human Trafficking Awareness Month, so we don't want to forget that at the end of the day. So everyone should have a two-sided document. I'm sorry, we kind of forgot to give these out in our excitement of arriving here. So one side of it has information about what human trafficking is. And we wanted you to have this and be looking at it and thinking about it because a lot of times people don't understand what human trafficking is. And they think it happens somewhere else. They certainly think it doesn't happen in Marin, but it does. And it's the reality of it is striking. So we want to educate you today about that, both on a global level and a local level. So please take the time to look at this and also see our sponsors here. We're so grateful for Redemption House in the Bay Area. Lisa and Liz are here today with us, and you're going to hear from them, from Vic Lacey, from Special Operations Finding Kids, and the Marin Coalition, and our Center for Domestic Peace is here, and of course, the League of Women Voters. And thanks to the Marin Wine and Gun Club for hosting this today. So, sex trafficking is just one form of human trafficking. It could be labor, it can be forcing people to transport drugs, or many other varieties of human trafficking. Most of what you're going to hear today has to do with sexual trafficking and selling and exploiting women and men and children for money. And the thing we want to drive home today is without customers, the people who run these criminal enterprises and exploit these people would not have any business. So we really want to educate people about that. We also want to make sure that we thank our partners here in the courtroom. Freudian slip. This is my second event today. We have in the back there our from the Center for Domestic Peace, we have Luz Alvarado, and she's going to be speaking to you later about what they do in the community. Also, the larger group of people there are from Community Violence Solutions, and their leader, Cynthia Peterson, is also here. And the findingkids.org is also a nonprofit, and Redemption House is a nonprofit. And I really want to drive that home to people because these nonprofits are the safety net for us saving the lives of these people who are being trafficked. Often law enforcement is not a trusted messenger. I'm not a trusted messenger for many people, but people with lived experience who are providing peer support are saving people's lives day in and day out. And we rely upon these people day in and day out to not only help us prove our cases, but to also keep our victims alive. So we have 3 quick slides to show you about our coalition to end human trafficking, and the co-chair of that, you can go to the next slide. My co-chair is Cecilia Zamora, who is not here today. I'm sure many of you know her from the community, but she is here in spirit. You can trust me with that. So we just want people to understand what the Coalition to End Human Trafficking is. Our mission is to develop a regional collaborative approach to end all forms of human trafficking, to identify resources such as those we're sharing with you today that support survivors of human trafficking and help to hold offenders accountable. Next slide. So our history, the Coalition to End Human Trafficking was established in 2014. Cecilia Zamora was right there at the table when it was formed, and it came from founding members of the Marin County DA's office and the Marin Women's Commission and Serapnimus International. And I'm proud to be the co-chair along with Cecilia of this organization. It is a public and a private partnership of county agencies, nonprofit organizations, law enforcement, civic community groups, and individuals. Our efforts focus on education, outreach, and advocacy. Members consist of agency and organization members, as well as general members. And we have usually, I think that's the last slide. Oh no, there's one more slide. Part of our outreach this year, because of the World Cup and also the Super Bowl, is my office and other DAs in the Bay Area region have joined together with business people like Uber, Lyft, actually NFL, hotel industries, any place where we think trafficking could occur, to have a regional response before these events so that people know, traffickers know that we are ready. We have operations going. We will have operations going throughout the Bay Area. And so this is a poster from our event that we had last week, a press conference where the San Francisco Bay Area for Human Trafficking were promoting their hotline, and also the information that we are going to be out there during the Super Bowl and the World Cup preventing human trafficking. So Vic and I had talked a little bit about how sometimes these traffickers exploit these these type of events by bringing victims into the area. And so he knows a thing or two about how we stop that. So that's something that we like to talk about. And again, we thank our community advocates. So I'm going to talk now about what we're gonna do today. We're gonna talk about human trafficking on a global level, because that's the level that most people think about. It happens over there in some other foreign country where we don't go and we won't see it. But we're also then, after Vic tells us about his global experience and international experience, then we're gonna really bring it local for everybody to understand it does happen here. It does happen in Marin. It happens in the Bay Area. And that's where you're gonna hear from our lovely ladies from Redemption House. So first, let me give you a little bit of information about Vic. Vic grew up in California. He served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps, and then 23 years as a police officer working in the state of California. He served 10 years as a highway patrol officer, 4 years as a special agent with the California Department of Justice, 8 years as a special agent supervisor and task force commander of state and federal drug task force, 1 year as a human trafficking detective, and time at the Chico Police Department, where he was cross-sworn to work also with the FBI, conducting police corruption investigations. Vic retired from state service in early 2008 and moved to Kolkata, India, where he joined an international justice mission. During the 3 years, Vic and his team rescued 160 girls from brutal sex trafficking. 160 girls. The majority of the rescued girls were between 11 and 15, and the 3 youngest were 5 years old. Yeah, it really happens, and he's going to share this with you. So I do want to remind people, this is sometimes hard to hear for people. If anybody feels uncomfortable that they don't want to hear it, you don't have to. You're welcome to leave, or we have this room in the back, 2 tables of advocates, including advocates from my office. Thank you, Anna, for being here, who talk to victims and help them navigate their feelings and the justice system every single day. So if you ever want to talk to them, they're happy to talk to you, right, ladies? Okay, so after moving back to America, Vic worked out of IJM's headquarters in Washington, D.C. He directed investigative operations around the world, and finally, he's done numerous consulting projects for organizations and countries surrounding human trafficking, both domestically and internationally. Vic has worked for various agencies on human trafficking investigations, both domestically and internationally, including a nonprofit organization known as Slavery No More. And he's also worked for several police and sheriff's department in California, the LA Regional Human Trafficking Task Force, Pocatello PD, Idaho, Stafford County's Virginia Sheriff's Department, Alabama AG's office, Thailand and National Police, the Thailand Royal Thai Navy, Dominican Republic Police, and the Attorney General's office, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and the Dallas Police Department, and more. And you know, this is like 100 years of experience. Are you sure you did all these things, Beck?
I stayed married through it all.
Yeah, wow, he stayed married through it all. So his wife is an angel. So most recently, and this is how I came to learn of Vic, and thank you to Finding Kids for helping us get him here today. In an effort to travel less internationally, Vic has most recently worked for Special Operations Finding Kids in the San Francisco Bay Area as their Director of Investigations. Vic's organization seeks to find and recover and offer resources for missing children, missing and exploited youth, and return them to their families safely. Special Operations Finding Kids is a very unique nonprofit. And Vic, we want to hear a little bit about not only your international experience, but what you're doing with Finding Kids today. All right. And
I got it. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'll be brief, I promise, because I want to hear from the other speakers. And I also want to leave time for question and answers, because I'm still learning about all of this. And every time we have question and answers, I learn a lot. So I'll be brief, but I do want to tell you, I do have some photos to share. I blurred the faces of some of the young ladies because I want to keep them their dignity and hope. But all my photos are real. They're not staged. They're, except for this, but they're all real because I want to give you the reality of what we see happening in our world. And I also apologize because I'm gonna give out some numbers and some statistics and some facts, which can be boring, but they also can be valuable to us because they can tell us how we're doing sometimes. And they can tell a story. So I recovered from, I I have to point this.
No, should just do it. Decided to be nasty. Go
Yeah.
back. Try to go back. No, doesn't want to work.
Okay, next slide. I'll just say that. How's that? I retired, like it was already said, a lot of this, she took my presentation, but I retired from a career in law enforcement at the end of 2007, specifically in the field of drug trafficking investigations. And the next slide, at that time, oh, no, that's it. Never mind.
It's working.
Okay, great. At that time of my retirement, then, if you were to ask me what the biggest challenge in our criminal justice system is, and to our community at the time, I would have told you that I believe, in my opinion, is drug trafficking, the drugs that are trafficked to our youth. But in the 19 years since my retirement, I've been involved in human trafficking investigations in 20 different countries around the world and in 10 different states in the US. And now, without a doubt, I will tell you that, in my opinion, the most destructive and most difficult crime problem that I believe we have in America is the exploitation of our youth and human trafficking. That's what I believe right now after seeing it all, so many different places. And you can just go on any site and run it, and you'll see so many arrests, so many statistics, people being arrested. It's unbelievable. It is a big problem, and it's a growing problem. And we must fight it harder and figure out ways of being better at fighting it. In fact, many of the drug trafficking organizations and traffickers themselves of illicit drugs that I used to arrest, they've now switched to trafficking of people because for them, as one of them recently told me, human trafficking pays better. And they have a never-ending supply of young people to exploit. They don't even have to go to a foreign country to get their products because it's right here all around them. And it's more profitable for them, and it's less risky because there's not as many people out looking for them. So I started my experience in the investigations of human trafficking, again, when I moved to Kolkata, India. We'll see if this works. This is a short video. Yeah, this is Kolkata, India. That's where I started my experience. And I worked there with International Justice Mission, the Police Services of India, investigating sex trafficking of very young minors, like I said, in brutal conditions. Some of these young girls were literally locked in a caged room, and customers could come in and pick one out and buy them. And like I said, during those 3 years, we were able to rescue 163 girls, the three youngest 5 years old. And after my work there, my eyes were open to the reality of human trafficking in our modern world in a very big way. And I'll tell you, I moved back to the United States in 2011. And I remember that day of moving back and thinking and talking with my wife, I'm so glad here in America that we don't have the problem of human trafficking that they have in Asia. Well, as you probably know, very soon after moving back, the reality of human trafficking right here in America, in our own towns, in our own backyards, became very clear and apparent to me. And even though it was somewhat hidden here to most at the time and not visible in the same way, I knew now that it was definitely here. And it existed in our own country and in our own states and in our own cities, and we were not prepared for it. Human trafficking is a problem that exists in every country in our world. And it definitely exists in our own backyard. Now, many people would deny that because they don't see it out here on the streets as much, or in places like there is in Sanagachi, India, where in a short 500-yard block, there are 6,000 to 10,000 sex workers held in captivity. 6,000 to 10,000. And the reason they don't run away is because there's armed guards at both ends. They see it over there, but they don't see that here, so they think it doesn't exist. This is Sanagachi, a photo that I took. Many of these girls are 15, 16 years old. But what we do have here in America is nearly every one of our teenagers and our pre-teenagers has a smartphone with a camera and access to the internet and access to apps and social media and online gaming. And they also have very little parental supervision. And the problem with that is so do the criminals, so do the traffickers, and so do the predators. They're on there also. But let's start again by looking at the global problem. How many slaves are there in our world today? Anybody care to guess? According to the World Economic Forum, as of January 2025, their studies, they estimated that it was over 50 million. 50 million people in the world are affected by modern day slavery worldwide, with the human trafficking business generating $236 billion in profits. Now, when I first got into the investigations of human trafficking back at the beginning of 2008, when they first recruited me to get into it, they told me that there were 28 million people enslaved in the world. And I said, no, there's not. That can't be. That sounds ridiculous. In fact, that's what I said. I doubted those numbers completely. But after working in so many cities and so many countries and states, even here in the US, I believe that the number is actually even higher. It's a hidden crime, and that's why I think it's higher. So what are the numbers here in the United States? How are we doing as a country? We haven't tracked human trafficking as well as some other countries. We are behind it. And truly in California, we haven't tracked it either. But in the US, a study by the Walk Free Foundation did a study called the Global Slavery Index. They estimated that almost 1.1 million people here are living in conditions of modern day slavery on any given day. Let me advance the slide. Palantir, intelligence-based company that does work for the government and the military, used data that they have to plot where the highest numbers of sex trafficking and slavery conditions exist. And you can see it on this map. And look at California, how red it is. Look at Texas, look at Florida, look at New York. But then look at the whole rest of the United States. And I believe it's true because I've done cases in nearly all of those places. I worked sex trafficking cases at the Kentucky Derby, in Alabama, in Tennessee, in New York, in Florida, all across the US. It's difficult to determine an exact number of sex trafficking victims in the US because it is a hidden crime. These are photos I took right around here at night. It's done in the dark places. It's done in the back alleys and on the internet, where it's not out in public as much. But estimates range widely from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands annually or concurrently. Data from official sources only captures identified cases, which are likely a small fraction of the total. Many of the cases go undocumented or unreported. Various studies have estimated the number of women and children forced into sexual slavery in the US as many as 50,000 every year. Other reports offer much higher figures. The US Department of Health and Human Services estimates that it's 250,000 women and children forced into sex slavery every year here in US. They become child victims of commercial sexual exploitation. They believe it could be as high as 300,000. In 2023, the National Human Trafficking Hotline reported 5,572 sex trafficking situations that came into the United States hotline, representing about 17,000 survivors or victims. We like to call them survivors to give them some dignity again. And also in 2023, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, some of you are familiar with NCMEC, they collect data on missing children. They received over 18,400 reports of possible child sex trafficking in 2023. 1 in 6 cases, they said, of reported missing children to NCMEC were likely child sex trafficking victims. Now, we've been talking about the US, but how about California? How are we doing in California? According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, if you go back to 2015, over 10 years ago in the state, there were 843 calls from victims or survivors of human trafficking in California. Now, fast forward to 2024, 9 years later, there were 1,300 calls. In 9 years, that's a 54% raise. And you know what? Our population has only grown 1%. So we know it's growing. Are we getting better at fighting it? Are we? I don't know. But let's just talk about missing youth in California. Let's start there. I have statistics because California Department of Justice gathers them on the number of missing youth in California. In 2014, you know how many missing children's reports there were? Over 85,000 in 2014. Now, many of those were found, many were recovered, many were brought back, some weren't. Out of those, how many were not found? How many did we never find? It averages almost 6 a day that were lost. That was 10 years ago. Fast forward to 2024, now our number's down to 63,000. Sounds better, right? But how many did we recover? Only 60,000. So now we're losing. The state of California last year, we lost 8 children a day, every day, that are gone. Have we gotten any better? Now these numbers are continuing to come in. That shows a 40% raise, 40% higher in the last 10 years. And you know what's the problem with missing children there is it gives the predators that many more young girls to traffic, that many more resources. So why are missing youth so important when it comes to human trafficking? Here's the key to human trafficking in California and indeed in the United States. It's all about vulnerability. In the world of investigations into sex trafficking or human trafficking in general, all investigators, all social workers, all probation officers or juvenile probation officers, everyone in the field will tell you that the biggest risk to a young person being trafficked is their vulnerability factor. Runaway youth are incredibly vulnerable. I know from personal experience, recovering runaway youth, that predators are proactively searching for runaways, specifically because they know they are an easy target. The predators and traffickers are here in our communities, in our shopping malls, in our parks, hanging out near our schools, and they're just waiting to see the youth. Here's a quote directly from our California Department of Justice. Studies confirm that runaway youth in California and nationally are highly vulnerable to sexual exploitation, labor trafficking, and severe physical and emotional abuse, often targeted by traffickers who exploit their homelessness and trauma. With research showing links between child maltreatment, frequent running away, and later victimization by traffickers and other predators, highlighting that these youth face immense risks like sexual assault, robbery, substance abuse, with higher rates for those homeless longer. Human trafficking is among the world's fastest growing criminal enterprise. I don't know what slide I'm supposed to be on here. And this is one of the reasons why finding kids came into existence. We know that there are gaps in the system. We know that law enforcement and the public justice system is overwhelmed, overworked, and under-resourced. Sadly, we know that of the over 60,000 missing youth last year in California, that a police investigator cannot simply respond and commit to a full investigation to each and every one of those. It's not going to happen. So when we get a case, we try our very best to immediately get boots on the ground, to get an investigator out there, a highly trained investigator. We don't just take any of them. We train them, we vet them. Trusted private investigator out right away, searching, looking, and investigating for where we might find that missing youth. And at the same time, to immediately begin a search of internet and digital platforms. Because if we don't, we know that the predators and the traffickers are looking for them. They are online. We also know that there are so many of our youth unsupervised online all the time, actively involved in social media. I don't want to scare you, but social media is the new and most common platform for predators and traffickers to find and connect with their victims. These are some of the programs that our youth face with. This is a picture from right around here also. Consider this. According to the FBI, studies show that there is an estimated 500,000 online predators active each and every day in America. Children between the ages of 12 and 15 are especially susceptible to be groomed or manipulated by adults they meet online. According to the FBI, over 50% of the victims of online sexual exploitation are between the ages of 12 and 15. And an estimated 89% of sexual advances directed at children occur in internet chat rooms or through instant messaging. And over a quarter of all the reported exploitation incidences, the online predator will ask a child for sexually explicit photos of themselves. And that's usually how some of this begins. 4% of children receive aggressive solicitations from adults online, including attempts to contact the children in person or over the phone. In addition, 58% of parents report being concerned about the threats and strangers pose online. 2 out of 10 children between ages 8 and 11 are aware of the issue and concerned that strangers may find out information about them. But then there's this, and whilst using social media, 40% of children remove the privacy settings in order to attract more friends or followers. We've just set up a great thing for predators. Finding Kids recognizes that the internet, social media, smartphones, and online activities are the most widely used platforms for predators and traffickers today, hunting and communicating with our youth. But are we giving up on the fight in that arena? No. We have hired digital online experts now to help us in this fight. We know that the landscape of the internet is complex and often hard to find the exact data needed. Nefarious activities can easily be hidden. And that's one of the gaps in our system that we're trying to fill and we're trying to fix. Often we found that when a young youth goes missing, the expert analysis of digital places where that particular youth was communicating often are the quickest way at finding them. So let's take a closer look here in the Bay Area. So we want to see what's going on right here. Now these are the 9 counties right around the Bay. I won't read them all off. You can see who they are. In 2024, the 9 counties of the Bay Area had 8,362 missing children's reports. You got the number up there so you can see it. But 7,991 of them were recovered. That means there were 371 that were never found. So last year, here in the 9 county area, we lost a child every day. Isn't that amazing? So that's not in any news. There's no news talking about it. I remember, this is off script here a little bit, but you guys from here, most of you remember back in the 70s, we had that Zodiac killer. Yeah. Remember? Killed 5 people in 9 months. And it was on every news channel, every day. FBI task force is out everywhere looking for this person because 5 people. We're losing a child every single day, and it's like it just happens. But let's look at Marin County. You guys have done a little bit better. Right here, just in Marin. How many missing children's reports last year, do you think? Where's the DA? Lori?
I don't know.
153. Not too bad, right? You recovered 150 of them. 3 you didn't recover. But we at Finding Kids, that sounds good, but we believe that every one is too many and unacceptable. We are after each and every one. As long as we have the ability, as long as we can, we'll do as much as we can to find as many as we can. Every child is valuable to us. This was, again, taken real close to here. And even if we do recover them all, what happens to them during the time that they are gone? What trauma do they suffer? Sometimes they're gone for not long, but they still suffer great trauma. Some are gone for long periods of time. Some were highly traumatized during that time and may never fully recover. Shouldn't we be concerned about that as well? And some will no doubt run away again or be convinced by a predator to come back to the life on the street. So in that light, we at Finding Kids are concerned about why youth are running away, about why they are so susceptible and vulnerable to being preyed upon. So we have now 10 parent advocates and several youth advocates as well. Most of our aftercare is really helping parents to parent their children better. It's been incredibly successful. All of our advocates, by the way, have lived experience and are trained well. All were parents of formerly missing or exploited youth, so they understand it a little bit. We realize that child exploitation and the proactive grooming of our youth is real, and it's going on here, again, hidden right in plain sight. We know that there are youth who have not yet been trafficked, but are at this very moment being actively pursued by traffickers. I'm gonna give you some inside information, not for the internet or public. In 2025, last year, January, we conducted an anonymous study at a local high school of ninth graders, 14 and 15-year-olds. 8.1% of them admitted that they had been involved in the exchange of sex. Now, this is an indicator that we know that sex traffickers are at work and engaged with our youth. We know that's how it starts with them. Now, the actual report itself is still confidential, but the findings are alarming. This is a local high school. Unfortunately, they're not runaways, but they are being exploited. We don't currently look for kids who are not missing, but are being exploited online. I wish we did. I hope someday we can, but we haven't yet been able to. But that at least gives us some insight into a county like Marin that has a very low number of missing kids. Marin may not have an issue with runaways, but we definitely have an issue with exploitation of our youth. We also know this because we have recent cases from here that started exactly like this. So this brings us to the concern that we have about finding the predators, right? About finding the traffickers, but also about finding the customers of young people who are trafficked for sex. We work hard to bring real identifying evidence about who the traffickers and predators are to law enforcement in hopes that they will get caught, fully identified, documented, prosecuted, and kept from preying upon our youth in the future. But we're also not stopping there. It's still very confidential, but we have begun, I don't know if Isabel has told you this, Lori. We have begun a coordinated effort with a couple of law enforcement agencies, I'm not going to name them yet, at finding the customers who are specifically targeting youth for sex. We want to actively pursue them. I can't go into details on the strategy or how it works, but I can tell you this. So far, we've had 11 arrests. And as we work out our model program to improve it and get better at it, there will be many more, we hope. Because if we're going to protect our youth, we've got to take predators off the streets. In closing, let me just tell you this. Finding our missing youth is important. Finding the predators, finding the traffickers, and even finding the customers preying upon our youth is only half the problem. Finding our missing and exploited youth as quickly as possible is essential to saving their lives and ensuring that they have a safe, stable future. But it's only the first step. After we find them, we must care for them. We have to protect them. We have to educate them. We have to give them, our survivors, back some dignity and some hope and show them that they are truly valuable because the predators are not going away. And we have to do everything we can to keep them from being vulnerable again. And I believe if we work together, we can have an impact on it. Well, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Beth. That's really hard to hear, but we know it's true. And before I forget, I wanted to thank Nancy Weber for helping organize this, even from afar when she was on vacation. And I forgot to honor her earlier. So Nancy, thank you for all that you do. I know you never want me attacked. So our next, I just want to say, I know there's one gentleman here who's written a book, but has anybody else in the room written a book? I haven't, but you know what? These two ladies have written a book. And the next speaker is Elizabeth Quiroz. She has a book, Purified in the Flame, and it tells her story of being trafficked and how she found her way out of this. And ultimately, it was a meant to be moment when she met Lisa, our other speaker, and they're going to talk about the very things they are doing to address the exact problems and difficulties that law enforcement and families have in finding these traffickers and holding them accountable, and more importantly, keeping these victims safe and finding them. They are trusted messengers to a community, and they are out there every day in the Bay Area and Marin, looking at human trafficking. They know it when they see it, and they're have a really unique way of reaching out and getting the trust of victims and providing them the really important life-saving support they need. So with that, I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Quiroz. She's a human trafficking survivor and former foster youth who overcame addiction and incarceration to become a graduate student and now serves as a social worker that supports adults and juveniles through the child welfare system. And it's not uncommon for these children to end up in the system. And so it's really important that we have an advocate and a peer with lived experience who can help these children in that system. She founded Sonoma County's first human trafficking support group and co-facilitates with Lisa Diaz-McQuaid, who is also our next speaker after Liz. So she is this published author of this book, and we have another book we're going to share with you today. And Liz, you ready?
Yeah.
So Liz is going to share her story and how her story caused her to have a dream, and how together later when Lisa speaks, we will talk about how they made that dream come true.
Thank
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lori, for that introduction. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that you took the time to come here to be part of this event, to learn more about human trafficking, to hear our stories, to hear about the work we're doing, because it's super important. Even if you're just here getting information and you're learning, like you're a part of the solution. You're not hiding. You're not saying, "Oh, it doesn't happen." You're not being naive. Like you're here doing something about it. So I just want to say thank you. I'm just going to highlight a little bit of my story and then kind of like how it started with the vision of Redemption House, and then how I met my beautiful partner, Lisa Diaz-McQuaid. So my trauma started at the age of 4. I come from a background of a lot of, there's criminal activities, there's addiction, abuse. I grew up in a fatherless home. I grew up in a single parent home. I grew up in poverty. So there's a lot of generational cycles within my family. Does this come out? Yes. Okay, because I don't like to stand still. I need to walk. Yeah. So I come from a very dysfunctional family. And so, like I mentioned, I grew up in a single parent household. And because of the abuse I endured, I endured physical and sexual abuse starting at the age of 4. It landed me in the foster care system. And when I was in the foster care system, that was also abusive. So because of this trauma that I was enduring at home and also in foster care, it led me to the streets. And that a lot of the times, that's why children end up going down this really dark path, and they get preyed on in the streets because they're looking for love and they're looking for families in all the wrong places. So I don't know if you guys heard adverse childhood experiences, but that's what I was experiencing. They're called ACEs. So this is what I was experiencing as a child. And I was always looking for that father figure. And my first trafficker was my father figure. And so eventually, when I met him, he was 27. I was only 15 at the time. This is where the honeymoon project began, the honeymoon phase began. And then he started sex trafficking me in the streets of San Francisco. So I was sold on the Blade in San Francisco, on 17th in Cap and 20th in Shotwell. And I was also on 16th and Mission. And so there was another woman that was a part of his gang that he was a part of that was also trafficking me as well. So by the age of 19, around 1920, I had 3 different traffickers, and my third trafficker was my drug connect. And this is a form of labor trafficking when you are forced to sell drugs for someone and then you have a debt to pay. So I was selling drugs for my bigger connect. And then because of my drug addiction, because at that point I was a full-blown drug addict, in and out of correctional facilities and being robbed because I was a female drug dealer. He was giving me drugs to run for him, and I was getting robbed. And so my debt kept getting higher. So I was in this vicious cycle of making money, committing crimes, so I could pay off the debt. So that's all I knew, was to sell drugs, was to sell my body, to be trafficked, to be in the life of gangs, to be in the life of incarceration, because that's all I knew. And it was a lifestyle and it was a mindset. It was hard for me to get out of that situation. And I know you mentioned in India, like or in that place you're at, that everyone is stuck in this one area, and there's guards everywhere where you can't leave. And for here in domestic, like in California, in the United States, we're guarded by our traffickers, but we're also mentally stuck. So when we're being trafficked by our predators, by our traffickers, or even in domestic violence, because it all goes hand in hand, you're literally stuck and you don't think you're worth anything to leave. You don't think that law enforcement is going to have your back. You don't think advocates are going to look out for you because of all of the trauma and the lens you look through from that trauma, from what experiences you've experienced growing up or previous relationships. So that's why it's super hard. It's called, what is it, love bonding or Stockholm syndrome. You're not able to get, Stockholm syndrome. You're not able to get out of those situations. So that's why for years it was hard for me to get out because that's the mindset I had. Eventually at my last arrest, I was able to wake up. I was able to be given a chance. I did get a 5-year prison term. I did time, but for me, I was able to rehabilitate and get the resources I needed when I was incarcerated. I completed a program when I was incarcerated called Starting Point, and then I got my GED when I was incarcerated. And this, because of that experiences I had when I was incarcerated and I got clean, I decided, you know what, I need to end cycles within my family. And I need to be able to be a present mom for my son because I was a mom at that point. And then I was released and went to Women's Recovery Services, which is a residential program. And that's where I learned about being a survivor of human trafficking, that everything I experienced was not my fault. And there's no such thing as a child prostitute. A lot of the times we are running from that shame, guilt, and that embarrassment and that stigma that we don't want to walk around with those labels. But when people tell you the truth and tell you your experiences and they give you a safe place to speak about it, you get that healing. So that's what happened for me. And I was able to embrace my truth, talked about what I experienced, and then use that as my superpower to do something different. So because of that experience, I went to school. I decided to go to school. I got my associate's degree when I was at Santa Rosa Junior College. And I want to say it was in 2017, I remembered I was part of the task force. So in Sonoma County, we have a local task force that, you know, we talk about human trafficking, how we can combat it, what resources there are that's available. And we always talked about a safe house. And I'm like, well, I hear a lot about us having a safe house, but we don't have that in Sonoma County. So we were just always talking about that and brainstorming about that. And I remember in 2017, I was literally fighting for my son. I was going to court to get my son back. I had about, I think 7 years or maybe 5-6 years clean at that time. I was trying to establish my life. I just got married. I was newlywed. I was literally trying to find myself while I was on my healing journey. And I was literally connecting spiritually, right? On my spiritual walk. And I remember, and I was also going for my governor's pardon. I was getting my criminal record expunged as well. So I had a lot of things I was going through. And I was working with an advocate at Verity. That's a rape crisis trauma center in Sonoma County. And she told me, she said, hey, I see that you're advocating so much and you're a survivor, you're giving back, you're on the task force. How will you open up a safe house? And I looked at her, I was like, I got mad that she even asked me or even said that I could do something like that because I was so overwhelmed. Like I'm going to school, had multiple court hearings. I was just doing a lot. And then for somebody to see me with all the potential to do that, I was overwhelmed and I was mad. And I was like, no, that's not me. I'm not your person. Like that's too much. Like I have something else I'm going through. And so I just left that be. And then I went to a women's conference in Los Angeles. And the person I was speaking, she was saying, hey, I'm a founder of an organization that gives back to the community that helps women come out of incarceration and reclaim their lives. I got a governor's pardon. I'm a voter now. Like she was talking about her empowerment and everything she went through and how she did it. I felt like she was talking to me. I was literally in the front row listening to what she was saying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a confirmation because I was, like I said, I was on my spiritual journey and I was kind of just reflecting. And when she said that to me, it gave me that hope. And like, you know what? She's talking to me. Maybe I do need to initiate that vision. Maybe I do need to start looking into it, how we can do that here in Sonoma, over there in Sonoma County. And so eventually I remember going back to Sonoma County and I started brainstorming, connecting to advocates in Sonoma County. Like, how can we make this happen? At the time, I did not have the name. Like, I just knew that we needed a safe house. I had that vision. And so I was motivated to start looking towards developing presentations and started to develop support groups, started to develop the vision of what an outreach looks like. So that's where the vision and all of this like components attached to Redemption House started developing. And then 2018 in the spring, I started talking more about it in my classes. I actually did a project on how it will look like to have a safe house in Sonoma County. And so when I started developing all of this, and I remember my first presentation. It was my first presentation, was at the JC. And so when I went to my class and I did this, I asked my teacher, can I do my presentation? Can I show everyone my teachings or what I know, how to bring awareness, share my story. Is that okay? He said, yeah, of course. So he allowed me to teach in this class. And that's where Lisa was in the audience. And that's where, when I started sharing my story and talking about what to look out for and what we're needing in Sonoma County, Lisa was in the front row, and then she can share more about her experiences on how we connected. But the long-term goal is for us to have a safe house. We're still working towards that. And then Lisa will also discuss about what we do and how we're reaching that goal. But I'm super grateful that you all are here and that you guys are part of the solution. And I just encourage all of you to continue to stay connected with Redemption House. We have our information in the back. And then just support survivors, like giving us space to share our experiences. Like Lori, thank you for always inviting us, because giving survivors a voice to share and being a part of the discussion is super important. We always have something to bring to the table. So thank you.
Okay, so now you have a little bit of the big picture of how this all fits together for today's message and information. And these women are out there every day doing what it takes to save victims of crimes. And I'm just so proud to know them, and the bravery it takes to stand up and tell somebody that I was incarcerated and this happened to me, and then to take it a step further and have a dream about saving others, I think is pretty amazing. So I honor you ladies today and every day, and we're gonna help you get that house. I've said this before, when I first met you, I think in 2019 or 20. These women both have separate jobs and commitments, but they take their time out to educate the community and help them achieve their goal. But you had your full-time jobs, and it was during COVID, and we met you on a Zoom call, and I think you were both like working out of your cars, reaching out to people in the community from your cars. And you were happy to share that, and because you knew it had to be done and you were gonna do it. And then the next time we met you, you had an office.
Yeah.
And now you have restorative circles for women. And so you are just, every time I see you, you are exponentially growing and supporting people. So I love seeing this, and I love, I feel like I'm a part of your story, and I'm just so honored that there's a reason why things happen. I met them because of this book. Oh, I left the other book there. Let me get the other. Lisa's story is in this book, along with 4 other survivors from the local Bay Area. And the book is in the back, and also it's the subject of a documentary that's about 25 minutes. And I met you for the 3rd time at the showing of this documentary at Sonoma State University. We showed it at Dominican University. Some of you might have been there or heard about it last summer, and we're going to get it in more places moving forward. So we are going to have a sign up sheet if anybody's interested in attending the showing of this. And again, we'll have these phenomenal women there as well. But we really want to promote this. And we have not, I think maybe half of the elected officials, I have given this book to them, because I read this book when I was on a trip. And as I was reading it and reading each story they're so different, but have so much commonality. All I could think is we've got to get this book and these ladies in our drug treatment programs, in our jails, in our homes where people are getting rehabilitated. We have got to get these women and their story out there, because when you see it, then you realize, oh, this is real, and it happens right here, and there's something we can do to change it. So Lisa is going to speak next about how she met Liz. And Lisa's story is she was born and raised in Santa Rosa, is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. She understands the effects of trauma and addiction, and is active in recovery from substances, and mentors women in their recovery journey. As a published author, Lisa contributed to this anthology about surviving human trafficking. She is employed as a human trafficking caseworker. Lisa? And then when you're done, Lisa, I really want you to talk about how you met Liz. And then if you want to talk together about you guys do on a daily basis, I think that'd be great. You can sit back down or share the podium, but I really want people to hear what you do on a daily basis. But first, please share your story.
Thank you, Lori. Take this off too. We're walkers and talkers, so. Steady story. All right, so thank you all for being here. Like Liz was saying, and I like to piggyback off of that. This anti-trafficking work and movement is something that not one person, one organization, one agency can do alone. So with you all being here in these chairs, listening and learning, you are being proactive in the anti-trafficking movement as well. So we thank you for that. My story, born and raised in Sonoma County, and like Liz, I come from a family of extreme dysfunction, a lot of generational traumas that were just passed down, right? And that were normal. My first experience as being sexually abused was when I was 5 years old, about 5 or 6, by one of my grandmother's boyfriends. Was told to keep that secret in fear of being in trouble. And I kept that secret. Moving forward, my mom married my stepfather when I was 8 years old. As soon as we moved into that household, I began being sexually abused by him. By the time I turned 12, and through the ages of 12 to 17, I was sexually exploited by him. So being a C-sex survivor is a part of my story. Taking that trauma into my adulthood, I spent about 17 years in my adult life in and out of incarceration, dealing with active addiction, in and out of treatment programs, and being trafficked in different forms, in different ways. My first trafficking experience was by a boyfriend, and I was promised all these things that were supposed to be, and they ended up being false promises. I was promised safety, and I was promised, love, and all these things that I was searching for, because I didn't have any of that growing up. I didn't have any of that moving into my adulthood. I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. I wasn't taught any of those things. So, being very vulnerable, like you're talking about, Vicky, those vulnerabilities. I'm meeting every single one of those vulnerabilities, So just searching for that love and that connection and that person that was going to keep me safe, and searching for that, and believing in people that didn't have the best intentions for me. So my first trafficking experience was by this boyfriend. I was told that it was going to be for a short amount of time. This was how I was going to prove my love to him. If I didn't comply with what I was being told to do, the house that my children was staying at with their grandmother, there was, I was told they were going to be harmed and things like that. And I remember seeing him do things while we were out in our active addiction, and I believe that his promises of hurting others would happen. I've seen him do that. So, I complied, and I was forced out onto the streets of Santa Rosa. So that was my first experience with trafficking. Moving forward, I had experienced trafficking through a promise for modeling in Oakland. And I went out to Oakland, escaping a domestic violence relationship that I was in Sonoma County. And I believe that was the answer, to my dreams, was to go to Oakland. I ended up going out to Oakland, and I met this person through what was called MySpace back then. I think that was like the very first social media page. So MySpace was a big one back then. I met this girl. We became really good friends. We communicated like for about a year, we built this friendship. And I was telling her about this terrible relationship that I was in with this man who was very physically abusive. And she's like, hey, come out to Oakland. You can come stay with me, my boyfriend. I'm modeling. We can help you get into the modeling business. So I believed her, and her boyfriend came out and picked me up. We went out to Oakland, and there was some modeling that took place the first couple months, but once I realized that it wasn't really what it was proposed to be, I told them that I was going to leave, and I was told that I could not leave because I had accumulated a debt with him for every bit of money that he spent on me, whether it was food that I ate, clothing that I wore, photo shoots, things like that. There was this large debt that I owed. And so at that point, I was then trafficked through the internet. I was trafficked throughout the Bay Area, and surrounding counties like Lake County, Mendocino County. I was trafficked down in Monterey Bay, and then I was trafficked across the states to New York and New Jersey. And that was all through the internet. So that was kind of like a big thing then, and it still is now. But that was like the introductory of the internet and trafficking. 2016 was my final arrest, and at this point, I was already deeply involved with a cartel from out of county, and I was like Liz was saying, labor trafficking, the forced selling of drugs is a form of labor trafficking. So I was forced to sell drugs for them. I was transporting drugs for them, and because I had this addiction to the drugs that I was delivering and I was using them and I was stealing from them basically, I acquired a debt, and in order for me to pay off my debt with them, I was therefore sex trafficked through them. So 2016 was my final arrest. I served my time for the charges. And I just like to say that, when human trafficking has happened and somebody is experiencing human trafficking and it is like a lifestyle, it's a part of their life, right? There's a lot of forced criminality that happens. So a lot of times, we're in and out of incarceration. And this is, for me, my first felony was I took a drug charge for my trafficker. So we're forced to take charges for our traffickers, right? And for me, it was a way of proving my loyalty, right? Or proving my love. So anyways, 2016 was my final arrest. I served my time, and then I entered a residential treatment program at the Athena House in Santa Rosa. Once I got to this residential treatment program, I then started talking about the sexual abuse that I experienced as a child, which is something that I never addressed before. And I felt like, oh, now I'm addressing this issue. This is, now I have a chance to actually stay clean and sober, because I had many attempts prior to that. And so I remember graduating the program, and I was working with a sponsor, and one of the counselors had asked me, she said, Lisa, what do you want to do? Like, what are you going to do when you finish this program? And I said, I don't know, but I just have like this feeling that like I just want to work with others with women, especially that have experienced sexual abuse or like sexual traumas. She's like, I can really see you doing something in that line of work. And I was like, thanks. I still didn't know what I was going to do. So I ended up enrolling at classes at the SRJC because I had no idea, what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to help women in their recovery journeys. So I started taking classes to earn my AA in human services. And in one of my classes, Liz was giving her presentation. I had not spoke to her prior to the presentation. She was like just one of my classmates, and I remember sitting in the front row of that class because my sponsor always told me, you sit in the front row at church, you sit in the front row at meetings, our 12-step meetings, always sit in the front row. And that was just so that I could be present, but also to help me because I was easily distracted. So I sat in this front row of class with Liz and listened to the presentation. She gave a PowerPoint presentation, and I was taking notes and listening. And then it wasn't until she shared her personal story of her experience with trafficking. And I remember sitting in the front row, and I was just like, I sat in the front row with this knot in my throat, like that knot you feel when you're about to start crying. I was like fighting my tears because I didn't want to start crying, because I was like listening to this young woman like share her story, and I could completely relate to what she was saying. Like, I hadn't even talked about my experience with being sold. Like, even when I was working my steps with my sponsor, I told myself that was something that I was never going to talk about. I was going to take that to my grave because I had so much guilt and shame around that experience, right? Like calling myself those negative derogatory names, that come along with being trafficked. I identified myself with those names. So when I heard Liz share her story, it was just resonating in me, and I just knew I needed to talk to her. So after class, I met up with her, and I would just, thanked her for sharing her story. And I was like, hey, do you think there's a time that you and I can talk? Because I'd like to share my experience with you and see what see about that. So we ended up meeting a few days later. We met in the KBBF parking lot in Santa Rosa. And I remember sitting there and sharing my story with her. And she's like, yeah, that's human trafficking. Like, what you've experienced is human trafficking. And I was like, I get choked up thinking about it. I remember like feeling this weight lifted off of my shoulders, right? Because I finally, for the first time, like felt some relief, because I had something to call what my experience was rather than what I was identifying it as, right? I wasn't a prostitute. I wasn't, an escort. I wasn't these names that kept me stuck in that guilt and shame. Like, I was a survivor of human trafficking. And with that, like that weight being lifted off my shoulders, and with Liz's constant just support and encouragement, like to share my story, you know, because her and I were both students at the JC at the time. And so we just started sharing our story on different platforms. And in sharing our story, we started realizing that ripple effect, right? Of like others in the audience coming up to us. And at this point, this is just at the junior college, you know, other people coming up to us, or at church, you know, our church let us share a little bit about our testimonies. And more women were coming up to us saying, hey, I've experienced that too, right? And so through that, that is how our support group developed, right? We had the support group. And so going back a little bit, we shared this experience, we started sharing our stories on this platform, and her and I just started running with it. Like, I felt like I was like, this newfound freedom, right? Like, I could be free to share my story. I could be free to be me and to learn who I really was, because I had all these years of, like, from my childhood all the way up through my adult years. I didn't start my healing journey until I was 41. So all my adult years, like, I lived in this trauma and in these mindsets and these like false identities of who I thought I was or who I was supposed to be, right? So I had this new freedom. And so her and I remember us, and if you want, you can come up here because this is the redemption house part. Like, I remember us talking about, like, what are we gonna call this? You know, we wanted to do the safe house, and I'm gonna tell you about the safe house vision. The safe house vision, we started doing outreach in Sonoma County. And so we connected with Julie's Purse Project out of Rockland. She would donate us purses that would have like hygiene goodies and these little notes that say, you matter, you know, you're worthy. And so we'd give these out in the homeless encampments to women. And when I was going back, because Santa Rosa is where I'm born and raised, and where my first trafficking happened, and where all my running around primarily was, when we were going out into those encampments and giving out these purses, I was running into women that I was trafficked with at one point. And so being able to go back into those dark places and be a light of hope, right? To people that are in these hopeless situations. Like, you're just surviving on a day-to-day basis. Like, you're not thinking about your future or what could be. So here I come with Liz and other women that were helping us, and we're giving out purses, and we're sharing, you know, that like they're seeing that we've come out of addictions and that we've come out of these terrible, you know, these dark places, and coming back in a new identity and in a new light. It was giving them hope, right? So our outreach started in Sonoma County, and we would do it every Friday, right? We're going out every week. Once a month. We're going out pretty regularly though. And we were literally distributing about 50 to 75 purses just in the Sonoma County encampments alone. And then it's grown, right? So from 2018 until now, our outreach has grown to monthly. We still do it monthly in Sonoma County, but we also do it quarterly throughout the Bay Area. So Redemption House of the Bay Area was founded in 2018 by Liz and I, and we came up with the name Redemption House because we both were on our spiritual journeys and our healing journeys. And we knew that redemption was possible. We knew that healing was possible because we were in the process of it, right? And we wanted to give others hope for that. So that's how the name came. And then we were working for the safe house because what we noticed out when we first started our outreach was that there were women that wanted to get out of their situations, but there was nowhere for them to go. You know, there was one woman in particular, she's actually passed on now. But she's a woman that I was trafficked with at one point, and she was out there in those encampments. And I remember she came up to us at that park and she was crying, and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And there was nowhere for her to go. And I remember that hitting me and just like breaking my heart, because we had some options for shelters, but like a regular shelter is not a place for a human trafficking survivor to go. Their chances of being re-victimized are really high. And so that's when we were like, you know, we need the safe house. We need to open up this place for, you know, this safe place for these women to heal. And then through our outreach was our support group. So you want to talk about the support group?
Yeah. So within our support group, it's a survivor-led support group. And that's what makes it so powerful, because it's within, like, it's a family-oriented group. We're all family, and we're peer-led, and we're leading the group to help survivors that come to group to overcome what they're going through. Because a lot of the times the survivors we work with, they'll tell us, I can't go speak about this with my therapist, or I go to counseling and I can't talk about this because they don't understand. there's that barrier, there's that label or that stigma, or this is taboo, we don't talk about this. Like or they just don't understand the terms or the language. They don't understand. So when they come to group, they're able to share their heart and their experiences, and there's no judgment. They're safe. We're a family. That's where they're finding their family net. Instead of going back to the streets or going out or going wherever, they're coming to our group to find that family. And sometimes there is individuals we serve that go back to that lifestyle, because again, it's a mindset. It's a lifestyle that they know. And so that's why it's a journey to heal from that. And so we have to walk with them and never judge them and support them and offer them services. And when they're ready, they'll come out of that lifestyle. We're constantly checking in with the survivors we serve in our support group. Like we do life with them, and we provide resources to them. If they need financial support, if they need mentorship, whenever they come to group, we have a children's room. They can bring in their children. The children go play in the children's room, and then we feed them dinner. Even if they were like, they come to our group and then they do go back to the life, go back to the streets, at least they're able to come off the streets for an hour and a half, feel safe, get some food, get some coffee, feel love, and then
Connection.
yeah, and then feel humanized for a second there. And then if they have to go back, then that's what happens. But at least we have our door open for them to come back for when they're ready to receive those resources. And we do also offer via Zoom. So we help survivors all over the Bay Area, and actually from Australia, from different countries.
In Germany.
Germany, we have survivors from Germany attending our group. And so that's what it is. That's what it's there for. So we have flyers on the table back there that you can grab some for those that are advocates, whoever's working in the community can grab those flyers and pass it out to those that you think are experiencing human trafficking, or just pass it out, because it's important that people know about our support group and that they have access to it. They can come in person or they can join on Zoom.
And I also want to add that from 2018 until now, the growth that we've made as a small nonprofit. So as Lori was saying, we did start off working we had donations like in the trunks of our cars, right? Sometimes in our homes, and our partners weren't really very happy with all the donations we were keeping at home or at our jobs, right? And so 2 years ago, we were finally able to get our own office. So we have an office in Santa Rosa, and at this office, it's our place where we meet for support group, because prior to our office and during COVID, we lost the room that we were able to utilize for our support group. So from 2018 to 2020, we had about 25 to 30 women that were joining the group regularly. And then COVID hit. And so we lost that space that we were able to use at that building. And so we had to get creative, because we didn't want to lose that connection with the women, like we knew that there was something that they needed. So we were like literally like sneaking and like meeting at parks, and finding places that we can meet at, just to keep that connection going. And so then after COVID ended, we were still trying, moving place to place. And so once we were able to establish our space at that office, we now have a designated space for our support group. In that space, one of the rooms we have is a child's room. So it's a children's playroom. So moms can come that have children, and childcare doesn't have to be a barrier for them to come to group. Like we have a volunteer from Santa Rosa Junior College Child Development that comes and offers, her hour and a half of time and watches the kiddos while mom's in group and can get her healing, right? That's also a space where we have a breathwork specialist who is amazing, and she offers one-on-one breathwork with the women, so that, to help them just, during the day, like with their trauma, and it's a tool, right? That somebody can use to help them if they're feeling overwhelmed, or, that trauma, that something triggers their trauma. They can actually utilize those breathwork tools that the specialist shares with them. We also get to space to have our donations. Like we have one room with all of our donations. At one point, it was in our cars and our own personal homes, and then we're having to pay for a storage unit. You know what I mean? So the money that we're getting, and mind you, Redemption House has been working solely off of community donations. It wasn't up until 2 years ago that we finally received our first small Sonoma County grant. So we are literally like continuing to do this work from community donations. And that's how we're able to do everything that we're able to do for our survivors, like Liz was saying, the financial support. And we are still wanting to grow, we're growing our groups. We have different support groups that we offer. I founded a group under a Redemption House umbrella called Voices, which is Voices of Indigenous Ceremonial Exploitation. So for young women that have experienced exploitation in our Native American population through so-called medicine men or spiritual guides that are taking advantage of our women, right? So and then there's a faith-based group. So we have these groups that are growing, and our ultimate goal is still to open this safe house. So yeah, so with that, all the work that we're doing, we're going to continue to do this work. We thank you for being here, and we hope that you check us out, look at our website, check out the information that we have up there, and our books are available for sale. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to have time for a couple of questions, and I just want to make one point that, the time frame when you two were in trouble with the law and covering up for your traffickers. I was a police officer during that time, and I know we have people in the room who are aware of that. And law enforcement had no education whatsoever that any person selling drugs or dealing drugs or on the street doing whatever were being forced to do that. And luckily, I'm happy to be on the other side of all this educational experience where now it's not, when a woman is being trafficked, she's not being prostituted for prostitution. And we are getting them help, but it's people like you that help us get their trust to tell their story. So I just want to ask one question, and then I don't know if we have time for questions from the audience or not, but I've never asked you guys, how many survivors have told you you're the first person who believed me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it's multiple, you know.
yeah, and a lot of times I think it's because they have heard our stories or you know are familiar with the work they do, or word of mouth, like, oh hey, Liz and Lisa can help you, or we'll listen, you know. I think it's more about them feeling comfortable enough with sharing their experience, because like we talk about that shame and that guilt, that really keeps a survivor or a victim silenced, right? Is that shame and that guilt that they carry. So if we're able to create those safe spaces for them to feel comfortable enough to share their story and share their experience without any kind of without any worry of you know judgment, yeah, then you know, like that's what's important. And I work as a human trafficking caseworker today for Verity, and so that's one of the main things that I share with my team that I lead is, you know, like we need to create these safe spaces and be the safe person for these survivors to be able to feel comfortable enough to share their stories with us so that they can get the help that they need.
What I've noticed too, real quick, when we do presentations, that's where a lot of survivors that we serve come from the audience because they're hearing our stories. And they come to us after, they don't ask questions during Q&A because they get embarrassed and there's a lot of shame around that. So after the fact, they get our numbers, they either call us or they tell us privately, you know, I've experienced that, I know what you're talking about. And that's where that relationship starts building.
Hold on to that.
Means I gotta stand up.
All right, so we're gonna take your questions now. I think there are quite a few, so we'll take them as we have them and stay as long as we can, all right?
Okay.
Here's the first hand that I saw.
Oh, this is a question for Vic. I just was wondering, when you said some of your statistics, for example, 63,000 children in California are missing and you recovered 60,000. Could you tell us how those kids, I mean, I know there are probably hundreds of different possible scenarios, but what do you mean by recovered?
Well, there's about 8 different categories of missing and exploited or missing youth on a missing child reports. One is a runaway, one is abducted, another one is unknown, and there's a couple others. The massive majority of those are runaways. But the California Department of Justice, a website that any one of us can go to, you can check the exact numbers of each one of those. And then that's how I come up with that, is I take the number, every law enforcement agency in California, if they take a missing child report, it goes into a database with the state. And then when there's a recovery, it also goes into the database. And that's how we come up with those numbers. Now, the difference is the ones we've never found. Yeah.
Okay, next question over here.
So I have just a statement to share. I worked with a woman named Laurel Botsford. I don't know if you've heard of her, but I interviewed her. I have a YouTube. It's called "Do You Know Where Your Kids Are Scrolling Online?"
Sounds great.
It's on YouTube. It's with Mad Mana Studios. Please, what I found is the people that are most uneducated are the parents.
Yeah.
They are beyond blind. They are
Yeah.
busy. They don't care what their kids are actually doing as much as they should. And then they've got shame. They don't want to deal with it either. So anyhow, I say this to say, please, if you know of a parent that seems amiss, send this to them because it's just a YouTube video and it's just an interview and it covers a lot of what you guys covered today. My question is, what are you asking for to build this house? What do you need? Do you have a number? Have you put a budget out there?
So I know, you know, in discussion with other leaders that have built their own safe houses, it's about 5 million to run a safe house. And so that's what it takes to be able to have a safe house running effectively, within a budget. That's gonna cover the employees, that's gonna cover the PG&E, that's gonna cover the water, all the build or everything that's to run the facility, that's what's gonna cost plus the employees. And then also, mind you, it also covers the co-executive directors' salaries as well. So there's just so many things that come into play with running a safe house. So that's what I'm saying, at least 5 million will be within the budget.
How many people?
For, you mean for the survivors we're gonna be serving? So the vision is, about a 10-bed, facility.
To start?
To start, yeah, so a 10-bed facility, and then it will be 5 bedrooms. So this is the vision we started. Eventually, we're gonna grow and we'll have multiple houses, but for now, our first house will be a 5-bedroom home, bunk beds. So it will basically be 2 bunk beds or a bunk bed in a room, so that way there's 10 beds.
I can tell you from a law enforcement perspective that that's really important because in my 30+ years in law enforcement, the psychology behind this is bigger than anything I've ever experienced. The psychological battle we face. And I remember getting phone calls in the middle of the night from mothers saying, hey, my daughter's been texting with this guy. I just found out all this is going on. What do I do? And when we do recover, some of the young women especially, we have no place to really help them. Domestic violence shelters, they don't have the counselor. It's completely different than being trafficked. They want to take their phones, they want to tell them all the rules, and then they want to say, follow them or you're going to get in trouble. And it just doesn't meet the psychology that's behind what's happening to them. So the places like Redemption House, we are way behind getting places like that up and running because we just don't have any place to put them where they get help.
And I just want to add that included in our vision is a vision on how the program would be run. So it would be very similar to like how a residential treatment program where you're in groups all day. But being that there are different intersectors of trafficking, so say substance abuse is an issue, then we would have, you know, something set up with an outpatient program so that survivor can go and get their outpatient treatment and then come back to group. So we have a plan set up on how that would look. But there's definitely, we have it set up in a way that all of the moving factors that come into somebody who's into supporting somebody who's coming out of trafficking, they'll be able to address all their issues.
Okay, I'll get over there in a second. We have a question here.
Probably one of the most surprising things we heard today is how young some of the victims of sex trafficking are. And we've heard how parents are unaware of what their kids are doing. But most of the day is spent in school. And some of these kids are in elementary school, some are in middle school, many are high schoolers. I'm wondering where the public schools come into the education picture when it comes to informing kids and informing parents. And I'm just going to say that many formerly prohibited hidden topics like violence in dating relationships are being addressed in our schools. So we're starting to open the doors to some of these forbidden topics. I'm wondering, is this one of them? What are we doing?
Absolutely. So in Sonoma County, where we live and where my full-time job is with Verity, I work very closely with our prevention department that actually goes out into the local schools in our area in Sonoma County and gives presentations. And we give presentations to kiddos starting in kindergarten. And that can be as simple as good touch, bad touch, body autonomy, boundaries, right? And then moving up, you know, as the children get older, moving up into those topics. So the topic of exploitation and internet safety comes up about 6th and 7th grade for the presentations and the education that we're providing in Sonoma County. I don't know what it is here, Marin, but I'm hoping that the same is happening.
I can add to that. And so it's mandated by the law too, that children are taught this in schools now. So that's a great, you're right. It is the conversation that finally is happening on certainly different levels when kids are young. I can't see your name there, but Laurel Botsford is one of our providers of education to kids in the community. And I think she's having a forum at the Elks Lodge next week. And also one of our partners who's not here today is a woman, Marlene Capra, who has about 30 teenagers who talk about sexual exploitation in the schools and as a team. And they've made presentations to the police chiefs, and her program is called Speak Safe. And she is out when the school starts again, she will be out in the community. She has presentations all over usually the College of Marin and bigger places like that, the JCC, but she's also out in the community teaching. And this, getting the message from peer support people and also people with lived experiences is what really resonates with children and youth. And then I just wanted for 1 second, if we could have Luz Alvarado back there in the pink coat. She is here along with our partners from Community Violence Solutions, but she works for the Center for Domestic Peace, and they also do a lot of training in our schools. And she had some information she wanted to share today. So if we could just give her a minute or two for that.
Oh, sure.
Do you want? Come up here with us, Luz.
Well, or we can get her mic. We'll tell you, law enforcement needs training too still to this day. When I was a young cop working the street and we saw a 16-year-old on the street doing sex work, we would have arrested her because we considered her a criminal. We had no idea that she's probably more of a victim than she is a criminal. All that is starting to change, but we're still way behind the power curve, convincing law enforcement agencies to commit to what the real problem is.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes.
Absolutely a pleasure.
Yes.
So again, my name is Ashley. It was Luz Alvarado, but then I got married and then I became Luz Beeser.
Yeah.
So I do work for Center for Domestic Peace. We are a domestic violence agency. However, what we do is that we are the agency that provides the shelter for victims of sex trafficking. And we work very closely with Community Violence Solutions, that is the lead agency in the county that provides all of the victim services, advocacy. They will actually meet with the victim, provide all of those support groups, provide those centers. And Bakura, that it's actually there, she works over at the juvenile hall as well. And she provides different presentations and talks also with local law enforcement about what are the different dynamics. But talking about the victim services at Center for Domestic Peace, when we have a victim, we bring them into our shelter. And again, we work in very hand collaboration with Community Violence Solutions. So then the victims have the two organizations helping them throughout their healing journey. And some of the times we also work with the special victims, the resource, what is the title? No, it's actually the resource officer from Homeland Security that they provide all of the services as well. And they also help victims with T visas when the victim is from a foreign country as well. And we make all of those connections. We do have these conversations with law enforcement as well, but most important, again, among all of us. In order for them to come to our shelter, so again, we have a 24/7 hotline that it's in English and Spanish, but that doesn't stop or prohibits other victims that speak another language other than English and Spanish to call. We have access to a language line so that we can help them as well. Yeah. And we also work closely when there is a police report made. Yeah. We work very closely with the victim witness unit as well. Yeah. And also the victim witness advocates, and they are a crucial trio, I call it, a part of the trio that is victim witness advocates, Community Violence Solutions, and Center for Domestic Peace to help victims, to give them hope, help them to heal. And some of them have said, thank you for helping me to build trust, because that's one thing that they don't have, trust. Thank you.
Thank you.
We still have a few questions. Everybody okay with a little more time to, okay, great.
So, the slides that you put up about statistics, and I noticed one of them briefly focused on the customers. I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about the customers and also I'm just curious, are all of the customers here in the United States or in California or any outside of the United States? But I'm just wondering about the customers and also what can be done or to maybe make it a little bit less attractive to the customers. And what can we do maybe in helping with that?
I'm
Thank you.
interested in all those same questions as well. But it's been a struggle because it's a hidden crime. It's struggle to even get statistics, but we know it's happening. There are things we can do and we're working on, like we've made 11 arrests, and this is kind of a model program specifically focused on the customers. I think it's a problem that's been around forever. We just haven't addressed it. We call them Johns. Why do we call them that? Why don't we call them what they are? Predators. Yeah. So we've even discussed taking pictures of them and putting them on billboards. We know that that's not the right answer, but this model program has given us some hope of stopping that, because that is the question we're all asking. How do we stop that from happening? We're looking at other things like holding tech companies accountable for apps that are now, whether you know it or not, specifically designed for youth to hide things from their parents. There's apps that are designed just for that purpose. We're trying to work with state legislators. Can we enact laws so that doesn't happen? Can we enact laws so that when predators are caught, they are no longer allowed to even have a cell phone? So there's a lot of things we're looking at trying to do, the predators, the customers, all of that. But it's an uphill battle. There's some legislators, there's some representatives in our state that are against it. I don't know why.
Maybe they need to wear a shirt with the letter P.
Well, I would like to brand them myself or take some other surgical step, but anyway.
I also would like to add with that, it's really important to, educate yourself on the new laws that are being passed or the bills that are being presented. Just up until recently, it was a misdemeanor to purchase sex from a child.
In California.
In California, yes. And so I know that we work very closely with Love Never Fails and some of their advocates that are at the Capitol building on a regular basis, fighting to get those laws changed. It's absolutely ridiculous that it's a misdemeanor in California for somebody to purchase sex from a youth, a child under 18 years old, and it's only a misdemeanor. Like, that's where the problem is right there. So we need harsher laws for these purchasers. They need to be held accountable for their actions, because it's a supply and demand. If there's no demand, then the supply.
And I'll just say, the legislature, safety and victims is not a priority to them.
Absolutely.
That's my personal belief, and you can't change my mind in that way. And so if it's a misdemeanor, guess what they created? Misdemeanor diversion, which is a period of good behavior where it gets off your record. So you just stay under the radar for a period of time, maybe go to a class, maybe do something online, pay a fee, do some volunteer work, and it's not on your record. And that's the problem. And then we also have a problem with mental health diversion. People, abusers of women and people who beat people with guns are coming to court and saying, I have a mental health problem that caused me to do that. I should get a period of good behavior where I cannot even be forced to take medication. So accountability is a huge problem. And that program To Catch a Predator had a ton of people in Sonoma County a few years ago that got caught, and the judge gave them all misdemeanor disturbing cases.
And it is a law in the state of California, the age of consent is 18 years old. So it should be just point blank under 18. It doesn't matter if you're 15, 16, 17. If you're purchasing sex from a minor, you are committing sexual assault.
In every one of these problems, there's deeper problems behind each one. We can put somebody in prison, but California, it costs, do you know what it costs to imprison someone for a year in California? $136,000 per inmate. We're the highest in the nation. So there's an argument against every one of those as part of the problem, and there's reasons why all that. I'll tell you how many 236.1 PC is human trafficking law in California. Last year, how many of those do you think there was? Charges filed? Nobody knows because the state of California doesn't track it. because they don't consider it a serious violent crime. They only track serious violent crimes. So we don't even know. Now that there was a law started January 1 where we will track it, but we won't have the data from that for about 18 months. So we can't even know statistically how we're doing until that time. 266 PC. Well, you were talking about, that's pandering, pimping. That's a man who calls a 15-year-old girl and says, hey, let's get together. Was a misdemeanor. If they take any overt acts, now it becomes a felony, but it's taken so long to just get that in effect. The 11 cases where we've had arrests on, you know how many of them have cleared in court? 0. Because we don't have enough courtrooms available. We don't have enough prosecutors available. The money that the state's putting in has gone down, not up. So there's all kinds of issues that we're battling against every one of them. But the bottom line is we have to make it a priority. Our youth have to become important and not other things. So at some point, we have to say our youth are more important than that. Let's spend money on that.
All right, we're gonna need to wrap soon. One more question and then we'll close.
Yeah.
So you talk about hidden in plain sight. And so if you're a citizen and you suspect that there's sex trafficking going on around you at some place, what is the proper protocol for a citizen to follow in terms of reporting something like this?
You should call the police and you should give them the information. Absolutely. Now, there are police agencies who are going to feel like it's bothering them. I don't care. Call them anyway. Because if they get 10 phone calls, they're going to act. If they get one, they might just note it. But we need people to call because people see things all the time and they don't report it. I've had this happen. Yeah, when I share, people say, yeah, you know, I saw this and it was a classic trafficking situation. What did you do? I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. People, we need to call. Even if it's not true, we need to call because those calls need to come in or our priorities are never going to change. That's just my opinion.
All right, we're out of time. I wish we could keep going. I think we probably need to wrap it here. Let me thank our panel. Thanks, everyone. This organization of ours, we have a motto. We call our group Marin Coalition Conversations That Matter. And I can't think of a conversation we've had that mattered more than the one we had today. So I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank Lori, Liz, Lisa, and Vic. I also want to thank Kevin Haggerty who put this program together. Thank you, Kevin, for programming this. Yes. Thanks to Alan Shavitz, our IT guru who puts these things together technically. And by the way, just as a reminder, this program has been recorded. So in about 24 or 36 hours, this will be up on our website under the archives page. So for those of you who have friends that would have come but couldn't make it, you can send them the link and watch this entire program online. Very, very worthwhile, tough program, but very, very important and inspiring. And I want to thank our presenters again. Thank you all. We hope to see you all again soon. Bye-bye.